In 1961, President Kennedy called on all Americans to rise to the challenges of the day. He knew that success depended upon the unity of efforts throughout the federal government and the nation. In a memorandum he wrote, "I want coordination of government activities outside of Washington significantly strengthened across departments and agency lines." From this, federal executive boards were born. The Greater Boston Federal Executive Board, one of 28 across the country, fosters communication, coordination, and collaboration with federal, state, and local government agencies. It is our hope that through this series, folks will learn about the mission and work done by different agencies, what that means for our country, and more specifically, what that means to each of us as individuals. This is your federal government, and I am your host, Diane LeBlanc. Hello everyone. Today we are featuring the National Weather Service, which is part of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I'm very grateful to have two representatives from this agency with us, Bob Thompson, who is the Meteorologist-in-Charge at the Taunton Weather Forecast Office, and Glenn Field, who is the Warning Coordination Meteorologist. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you both for being here.
Our pleasure to be here, Diane.
Bob, I'm going to start with you. What is the basic mission of the National Weather Service, and what role does the Taunton office play?
Well, the basic mission of the National Weather Service is to produce weather information to save lives and property and enhance the national economy. For our role for the Southern New England area, out of the forecast office in Taunton, we focus on that same mission, but for our area in Southern New England. Now, when you start to break it down, pragmatically, we're looking out for forecasting and issuing warnings as necessary out 7 days. And there are various types of forecasts that we issue because weather affects so many people, in such a diverse way. There's temperature, and there's the amount of precipitation, and the probability of precipitation, humidity, wind, so on and so forth, that affect people over land. And we issue forecasts and warnings for people who are land-based, but we also issue forecasts for our mariners over the coastal waters. What might be inconvenient over land could be actually life-threatening over the water. We forecast for 10 airports in southern New England, and somebody could be stuck in San Francisco because of the weather in Boston. We also issue fire weather forecasts and river forecasts for over 3 dozen now river forecast points.
So Southern New England is your area of geographic responsibility. Define Southern New England.
Well, for us, we're part of a big jigsaw puzzle in the United States. Our part of Southern New England is actually all Massachusetts except Berkshire County, all Rhode Island, northern Connecticut, that includes Hartford, Taunton, Windham counties, and southwest New Hampshire, including Cheshire and Hillsborough counties.
The reason for that configuration is the Doppler weather radar. We were placed in Taunton as part of a national network. If you draw concentric circles at 10,000 foot elevation across the whole country to see where areas could be best served, that's how they decided to put us in Taunton, because we serve the Boston area, the Providence area, really well from being away from the ground clutter of those buildings, for example.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. Now, Bob, the agency that you're part of, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, say that 4 times fast. Right. So what else does your agency, just very briefly, what else does NOAA do, and where does the National Weather Service fit?
Well, NOAA's mission includes science, service, and stewardship of our environment, which in turn includes understanding, predicting climate, weather, the oceans, the coast, and the associated ecosystem. So we fit into that picture, certainly from the atmosphere side, but you can't compartmentalize all that because the atmosphere affects the oceans affect the atmosphere, be it a sea breeze, be it where the rain-snow line would be on a local scale, or on a much more global scale, is the type of interaction that takes place with sea surface temperatures in the tropical Pacific, where our El Nino and La Nina situations that most people have heard about occur.
Of course. So you are the meteorologist in charge. What exactly does that mean?
Well, my primary role is to see that we accomplish our mission today, make sure we're meeting the needs of our customers, which is just about everybody when you get down to it. But also taking a look at where we need to be in the future as well. This is something I tell my staff a lot. We not only need to meet the needs today, we need to try to anticipate what those needs will be in the future so that we're equipped with new science and technology and the communication skills to be able to deliver the messages that will be needed then.
Glenn, you have a slightly different title, the Warning Coordination Meteorologist. What does that mean?
Correct. Coordination is my middle name. Actually, once we issue the warning, the only way that the warning is going to be successful is to, and to be able to save lives, which is, as Bob said, is our main mission, is to have everybody understand what they mean and know how to respond to those warnings. So my job is to interface with all of our customers, as Bob said. That's everyone from emergency managers, the media, aviators, school children, and it's kind of a customer service disaster preparedness position where everyone is your customer.
And how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing it since 1993.
And Bob, how about you?
I've been in this position since late 1989.
Okay, all right. Well, recently we visited the National Weather Service in Taunton. We got to see the operation firsthand, and we learned how technology is used to develop a forecast. So we are here at the Taunton Weather Forecast Office. Thank you for the tour. I'm looking around and I see all of the staff, and they're each at their area, and they're monitoring different activities. And so you're going to walk us through how you make the forecast on a day-to-day basis.
We're going to go through a very brief look at how we make the forecast, an extended look. We'd be taking a semester course at a college, so we won't do that. But let's take a look at what a meteorologist is looking at when trying to develop a forecast. The first thing is to get an idea as to what's going on right now. If we can understand what is happening, why it's happening, that gives us a good start to proceed to the next step of forecasting. And as an example, on the screen where you see a lot of white, that's actually cloud tops from the satellite, and underneath it you see a little bit of green. Those are observation sites, so it gives us an idea as to what we're looking at from above in terms of clouds, and also in terms of temperature and humidity, wind, and so forth at the surface. So it gives us a snapshot of what's going on.
Now this technology, Bob, Doppler radar, is that still the most current technology?
Yes, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. We also don't just look at a visible satellite, because that would not help us much at night. We'd be staring at a dark screen. So we look at infrared imagery, which many people are familiar with from night work that that armed services do, and other search and rescue folks. Well, we look from the satellite at imagery, and it helps us get an idea as to how high the cloud tops are, not just where there are clouds. So it gives us a little more information, plus we can see that 24/7. And you might see some dashed lines in here. Those are lightning strikes, cloud to ground lightning strikes. So it gives us an idea where we've got thunderstorms that are in progress or developing. Now, as we get a little bit more honed in on our area, that's where we take a look at the Doppler radar imagery. And this is an example that we're seeing on the screen now. This is giving us an idea of what's out there in terms of how intense the rainfall might be, with the various colors corresponding to the intensity. And because it is a Doppler radar, we also have the ability to take a look at the velocity within the storms. And that can help us, especially with the storm that might be going tornadic, or it may help us with a significant wind shift that could affect aviation operations. The green colors, the so-called coup colors, refer to flow coming towards the radar, and the red warmer colors refer to flow going away from the radar. So those are tools that we use to get a sense of what's happening to the atmosphere now. Now, as we look out ahead in time, that's when we start to rely more upon computer models that help simulate the atmosphere. And in essence, how they work is we ingest a lot of data, and it's a lot of data. It's like billions of points of data into these computer models across the globe to get a snapshot of the temperature field, the wind field, the pressure field, and other parameters that will help us simulate how the atmosphere will evolve. And using some basic physics, except it gets a little complex when you actually try to solve it out, we're able to get a look at how we think the atmosphere would evolve with time. It's not perfect. Here's an example of a computer model now showing actually a storm passing off of our coast couple days, actually about 3 days ahead. And the reason it's not perfect is, one, the equations that we use are complicated enough. We have to approximate a little bit. And the other, probably bigger issue is the fact we can't sample the atmosphere at every single point. There are gaps between surface stations and somewhat larger gaps between our upper air stations, because the atmosphere is three-dimensional, so we need to look aloft as well. And in those gaps could be something going on, a little perturbation, a little disturbance, whatever, which as it grows, it may be something we don't capture right away, and thus can result in errors down the line.
Well, as you say, no system is perfect, but I'm sure the National Weather Service monitors or tracks the accuracy of the forecasts and their predictions. You know, how accurate is it?
Well, we do track the accuracy of our forecasts, and depending upon what you're looking at for temperature, generally we're within about 3 degrees of the expected high or low temperature, but some situations we're more confident than others. We track very closely our warning performance, and it depends what kind of phenomena. With our winter storms, usually we have about 90% or better accuracy with our winter storm warnings, and with severe weather, which is a little bit more challenging, we still generally have about 80% accuracy with that. But it does depend what we're looking at, how precise we're trying to be. And one of the things that we need to do is to communicate those situations where we're more or less certain about the outcome. And that's actually one of our big challenges, so that people are reacting or responding to our forecasts and warnings have a better sense as to just how confident we are and what kind of range of uncertainty. There's a total of 122 forecast offices across the country, Diane. And there are also a number of national centers that we work with as well. Perhaps the one that most people would be familiar with would be the National Hurricane Center, located in Miami. And we work closely with these folks. I like to look at ourselves as the general practitioners for southern New England. We are forecasting day in, day out all types of weather phenomena, and here in New England we get a little bit of everything over the course of time. Whereas the meteorologists at the National Hurricane Center are really more specialists in tropical meteorology, and they're going to be focused on, say, a hurricane or a tropical storm. If it's a storm that may impact us, then we are coordinating with them very closely as to where watches and warnings may need to be issued. But they will be looking at the storm itself, the structure, how would they think it's going to change in terms of intensity and the track, and we'll focus on what we feel will be the impacts more in our local area. Getting into something a little bit more significant, that's when we start to take a look at developing our warnings. And there are two types of warnings that we deal with. One we call longer fuse. It's like a winter storm warnings, where it may be a day or two away that we're taking a look at. The other type are what we call short fuse warnings, and that's more for like flash flooding or severe thunderstorms, where you're talking literally minutes, even almost to seconds, that we're trying to get the warning out. And first, taking a look at, say, a long fused example, if we think there's going to be a winter storm warning for the next, say, the next day, what we will do is come up with a piece of software which will show a map of the greater southern New England area, and we can quite literally just color in those zones, those portions of the area that we think would reach that winter storm criteria that we need to warn on. And then we've got a sliding scale over to the right where we can adjust the time of the event. And say it's going to be a winter storm warning, so I choose winter storm warning. When we're ready with respect to the area that it's going to be in, the time frame that it will be in, the type of warning, then we go ahead and click and run dismiss, and then that gets put on into this gridded forecast database that we have, and then from there we can produce the product that will actually in a narrative form talk about the warnings. So now when you hear a forecast or you look at a forecast, say on the web, it's actually something coming out from our database. And the advantage of having something like this is that you can have a variety of users. Could be more marine-based, could be emergency managers, it could be fire weather folks who may want data to ingest in their own fire behavior models. They can then take it in whatever form is best for them from the database and then run with the information. So we can just get that much more information, much more precise. We actually forecast hourly out days than we ever could before by trying to type a text forecast. So it's really a dramatic change in how we do our business.
What about a short fuse event like a tornado warning? How long does it take you to get out that kind of a warning to the public?
Well, I'm going to show you how quick it can actually be. It's amazingly quick. I would say as much as 30 seconds if we're ready and have everything prepared. So let me show you what I mean. All we do is go in the upper right-hand corner here to a program called WarnGen, which brings this display up here. Now, this is actually a good example because we have some showers on the radar. Let's pretend that they're actually thunderstorms. So we can drag the cursor to this particular storm up here in Worcester County, for example, and then go back a couple of images and put it exactly over the center of where it was there. And you can see that the computer has automatically tracked the storm. And so what we can do then is decide how long we want to issue the warning for. You can see that storm's moving very fast. So if we only want it to be 30 minutes, you see the arrow ends right here, so we can pull back the warned area to just that area. And this is the box that will be warned actually right there. So all we have to do is adjust it like that. Decide over on the left-hand side, severe thunderstorm. Doppler radar indicated it, either that or a spotter reported it. If we think it's going to be the minimal, we can say 60 miles an hour. If we think it'll have quarter-size hail, in addition, we can choose that. If there's actually a tornado watch in effect, these call to actions will say that a tornado watch is in effect. Otherwise, we just have a definition in there that severe storms produce tornadoes. And then, with one click of the button, we create text. And up on the left-hand screen, you'll see that that it has already put it in the format that it needs to be in. The emergency alerting system codes at the top for all the radio stations and television stations to be able to scroll it. And it already says what counties are in it, how fast it's moving, towns in the path of the storm. We can edit it if we want to, but if we've chosen everything properly, we really don't have to edit it. Now, I'm not going to issue it here because I'll probably get in big trouble. But this is all you have to do is then press the enter button, and the warning is disseminated. So you can see
everywhere it needs to.
as soon as it's issued here, it's beamed up to the satellite, and in just a matter of a second or two, it will be broadcasting on the weather radio, emergency alert radio stations, and the TV meteorologist will have it.
And how about online access? Does this get posted?
Immediately be posted on our webpage, weather.gov.
Incredible.
So the point is here, we can be monitoring the radar at different levels of the atmosphere. As every slice comes in, we can say, oh, that's looking pretty severe, and we'll just wait for one more scan to come in. And if that confirms it, we can actually have it generated and ready to go. And when we see that confirming image, we can go through these steps, which take less than 30 seconds, and issue the warning. We have a situational awareness display that we use. In the center of the screens here, you can see that today we have the water vapor satellite imagery and radar imagery from across the region that we're monitoring. We can put the problem of the day there. In the upper left-hand portion, we actually are monitoring different webcams from across the area, regular webcams that you can get off the web, but that helps us to see fog rolling into Logan Airport or rip currents along the coast, for example. And we also can monitor local television stations. And how that can be really important is one day, all of the stations started breaking in with, for example, an explosion in Danvers, Massachusetts. And so when we saw that, we were able to contact the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, actually before they even contacted us, to see if they needed any help. We can be very proactive in that regard. Turns out it was a volatile chemical, so they didn't need us to run a dispersion model that we could have run. But what was really important to them was that rain was going to be occurring in the next 24 hours, so how long did they have to cover the roofs with tarps before the rain occurred? So we try to be proactive, and the situational awareness display helps us in that regard.
David, so you are the hydrologist in charge for the Northeast River Forecast Center. And as I understand it, there are only 13 such centers across the country. You're located here in Taunton, co-located with the Taunton Weather Forecast Office, and you also are part of the National Weather Service. Tell folks, what does it mean to be the hydrologist in charge, and what does the Northeast River Forecast Office do?
Certainly. The Northeast River Forecast Center, as you said, we're one of 13 facilities in the nation that are here to provide river modeling and flow and stage forecasting and water resource forecasting across the nation. Our unique little nestle of real estate is much of New York State and all of the Northeast. It's a very complex geography. We have to deal with everything from mountainous flash floods to tropical storm surges to big snowmelt floods, especially in the springtime. As hydrologist in charge, I oversee all of our operations and the research and the development activities that we perform. I have a staff, including myself, of 14 with a very, very diverse background. We've got a mixture of people which really add to the dynamic of how we go about our business. As a river forecast center, we've got folks with pure meteorology backgrounds, actual engineering backgrounds, civil engineering in particular, even a couple of environmental scientists. And we need each of those skill sets to do the jobs that we have to do to provide you folks with a forecast of how high the Charles River may go, or how quickly the flooding might proceed on the Merrimack River, for example. We are both part meteorological forecast center and part hydrologic forecast center, because in order to make a forecast for how high a reservoir might rise or how high a flood might be in a certain community, you need to start with observations. We need observations of the volume of water at the reservoir, the flow and the elevation of the river water itself. We need precipitation gauge data, temperature data, so that we can put all of this information together to first create a snapshot of what the hydrologic environment is right now and how it's behaved over the last 3 to 5 days before we can go forth into the future and actually try to then predict how much rainfall, how much snow melt, how will the temperatures play into the precipitation type to generate a forecast for the Charles River, the Merrimack River, and so on.
So, most folks get their weather forecasts from TV or radio. And some, including my mother, believe that it is the guy or the woman on TV who's making the forecast. But I told her it's my friend Bob and my friend Glenn. So, Bob, tell us about really what's the relationship between your office and the media, the TV folks?
It's actually a very collaborative relationship. It is not at all competitive. We consider ourselves part of what we call the weather enterprise, with the end result being hopefully the best information that science can offer to the people who need weather information, which again is essentially everyone. So we do work cooperatively. In some ways you could think of the National Weather Service as wholesalers, giving them information that then private sector meteorologists, be the broadcast meteorologists you see on TV, or those who may have a particular client base, can then take that information and tailor it to either their client base or their viewing audience.
So we have a really good relationship with all of our private partners and TV meteorologists. Outside of the day-to-day forecasting, we have conferences and special training sessions about the radar, and so we get to actually see each other very frequently, and that collaborative relationship is critical because our mutual goal is to save lives and to provide critical weather information to everyone.
So the folks at the Weather Channel, they get their information from you?
They do, and then they may package it or tailor it in a way that best fits the audience. But why it's such an important relationship is that they really help us get that information communicated to people who need to respond in one way or another. And that's just a critical component. And not always just real-time weather information, but they can be a great partner in terms of preparedness activities and telling folks what you should do when we get a certain type of warning issue.
And that is so important, the getting out of the message. So beyond the TV opportunities, radio opportunities, website opportunities, how else do you disseminate your information to the public?
Well, we have, as you mentioned, our website, weather.gov/Boston. That's the official website. If you forget the Boston, just weather.gov, G-O-V. We'll get you there and just click on Massachusetts or whatever state you're in. We have the weather radio. I think we're going to talk about that later. Yes. And the weather radio is a great way of getting our information out. We're trying to get more people to know about it. We're now on Facebook at our office. We post little tidbits about the upcoming storms on our page. Private companies get the word out to people via onto their cell phones and Blackberries, pagers. So there's a big role for that. Communications are evolving and changing, though, with the advent of the new technology. And one of the things that's going to be coming up in the next 1 or 2 years, you'll have to buy a new, I believe you'll have to buy a new smartphone, but they'll be equipped with technology that will have emergency alerting system that can actually go off with an EAS warning for a severe thunderstorm or tornado right on your phone.
Wow, pretty impressive. So do you ever check the Farmer's Almanac? No? Neither one of you want to take that?
Well, we've been known to pull it out of the drawer once in a while if we want to just lighten up the environment a bit. Yeah.
I'd like to add a comment to the private relationship with the government and private. There's a big role for private companies as well that can, private meteorologists, providing specialized forecasts, something that we can't do, for example, to the cranberry growers or to be on radio stations, you know, every hour, things like that. So
it really is a very close, collaborative.
It's the weather enterprise, as Bob said.
Wow. Yeah. That's again, very, very impressive. Well, Bob, I know the role that you play for the federal community. You're a member of our federal executive board, and you are part of our emergency decision and notification team. So whenever we're looking at a weather situation, you are our go-to guy. I'm guessing you have all kinds of relationships with state governments, other federal entities. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we do partner in a big way, and this may be a portion of the National Weather Service that's unseen to many people, but it's a very important portion of it, where we are attempting to work with others who have to make critical decisions that can then, in fact, impact the lives of so many people, so many other people. And this includes emergency managers at the federal, state, and local level. Of course, it involves other federal agencies like the Coast Guard, the FAA, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the USGS. For example, if we're anticipating a heavy rain event coming in, then the Corps of Engineers may want to release some water from some of their flood control projects. With the FAA, we're working with them every day in terms of safe routing for planes and whether alternate airports need to be considered and the fuel stored for such, sometimes in a more dramatic life or death way. Mm-hmm. That goes unseen for many people. Occasionally, we'll get a pilot who's only qualified to fly when you can see where you're going, not flying on instruments in the clouds, but they'll get caught on top of a cloud deck. Well, our meteorologists at a unit that we have at the Air Route Traffic Control Center in Nashua, New Hampshire, will work with the controller to direct the pilot to a break in the clouds where they can get through. So it can make a difference between a tragedy and a safe landing. So there are many ways that we do. If there's an impending storm, of course, the timing of it can be critical as to whether there might be some recommendations as to whether people come in later, come home earlier, maybe telework for the day, whatever the case may be. The Steamship Authority, they might make some decisions as to when they may be pulling back on some of their runs to the island. You've got DPWs that are making staffing decisions for what could be a heavy snowfall or pulling together assets like sandbags or whatever for flooding. But there's a whole variety of things when we get into a major storm that people need to make proactive actions to be ready for when the event takes place. And if we give them good information, then they're ready, and the result is the public benefits by a good response.
So when there's a major storm imminent, and I know we've been on the phone together at 4 o'clock in the morning, do the both of you sleep over at the Taunton Forecast Center? How does that work? Do they ever let you go home?
We've been known to sleep over, but I should mention too that we've got a very dedicated and qualified staff where we are a 24/7 operation because the weather doesn't stop. And we've got people we have a lot of confidence in. So we don't have to physically be there all those 24 hours. But if it gets big enough, then we're not going to want to stray too far away.
Actually, we have an emergency manager conference call list, and it's in a form, not an email form that's accessible by any of the forecasters, so they can at any time of the day.
So forecasting in New England, it's often said that if you don't like the weather, wait a minute and it will change. Is it really more changeable in New England than it is in other parts of the country?
Well, it's an interesting question. If you go other places in the country, and both Glenn and I have been at other offices in the country, everybody will say that the weather changes quite a bit there. And every office and every location in the country does have its own idiosyncrasies and its own challenges. And the West Coast, I've been in Reno, Nevada, and Anchorage, Alaska. You've got some of the mountain impacts to deal with. You've got systems coming off of the Pacific Ocean where there's a data void, which can be a special challenge. But in the end, having been in various locations, I think the weather is a little bit more changeable in New England, probably attributable to the fact that many of the storm systems converge near us, not necessarily right over us, but close enough that we're getting a continual change of air masses through the course of the year.
So Glenn, what hazards should we be prepared for here in this area?
Well, there's the fun of working in New England is that we get everything, and so that's the fun, but it also is quite a challenge because you don't get them all that often necessarily. In the case of a hurricane, for example, it's been since, what, 19 1954, that's 58 years now since we've had a major hurricane. And it's actually been since 1991 since we even had an actual hurricane. Last year we had Tropical Storm Irene. It was bad, but it wasn't a hurricane. And so people of my generation don't really remember them that much, especially the serious ones. And so, I mean, so therefore hurricane is one phenomena. And another thing about hurricanes actually is down on the storm surge that you hear about, you know, so devastating on the south coast. Well, we have our own area in Buzzards Bay, which has the potential someday for a storm no greater than hit but too far west in 1954, like Carol, to produce upwards of, in the case of Carol, 17 feet, but in the case of the 38 hurricane, up to almost 30 feet in a particular portion of the northern part of Buzzards Bay. And people have no idea that their house would be overtopped. So there's still a lot of preparedness and education that we have to do for that. Lightning is probably the #2 killer nationwide behind flash floods. And locally, I mean, everyone needs to know about that. We have a lot of efforts in that regard. We have a lot of sayings that we'd like people to know. There is no safe place outside. Just get indoors. When thunder roars, go indoors. If you can hear it, fear it. If you can see it, flee it. So try to get that word out. Tornadoes, of course, they happen somewhere across southern New England, generally 1 to 3 every year. But they tend to be the weak ones, the EF0s or the EF1s. Now, last year, of course, we had the devastating June 1st tornado in Springfield, Monson, Brimfield. But those significant ones that are EF3 or greater do occur approximately every 10 years. And people need to prepare for that. We had the Great Barrington tornado in 1995 in Berkshire County, 1989 in Hamden, Connecticut, 1979 in Windsor Loch. So again, it's not every year and it's not every location.
But hurricanes, tornadoes, they do happen in
flash
New England.
floods. There's another thing with Irene. We had tons of flash floods in the western part of the area, even long fuse floods. And snowstorms, I think everybody knows what to do, but how many times have you seen people that have the snow still on top of their car? You have to get people to get that off.
To take care of that. So earlier you talked about NOAA weather radio. And that's something I think is real important. So tell folks a little bit more about that.
Well, NOAA Weather Radio is something you can purchase at your favorite electronics outlet for as low as $20, $30. And it's equipped with a warning alarm tone. And what that does is, as soon as we issue a warning in our office, that's a short fused warning, severe thunderstorms, tornado, flash flood, it will trigger a tone alert that is separate from the emergency alert system that you hear on the regular radio stations. But a separate tone alert that can go off in your house at 3 o'clock in the morning and wake you up. It's one of the only means that can actually save lives. Now, we don't get, devastating tornadoes every night at 3 in the morning, but especially in other parts of the country where they do.
How long has that been available to folks?
Many years, since the 70s, I believe.
and most people probably
really
don't
only about
realize that.
Statistics show that about 1 in 10 people even know about the weather radio. So we're trying to get that word out. And it's an all hazards radio too. It's not just for weather. We have the capability, and we're working with our state partners to fully utilize it to be able to, we have the capability of broadcasting emergency information such as Amber Alerts, getting that word out as well.
You've both touched on, the importance of the preparedness and the importance of outreach and education on a lot of these related topics. Specifically, out of the Taunton office, Are you out in the community on a regular basis? Are you in classrooms? Bob, talk a little about that.
Yes, and Glenn can talk a lot too, because to a large extent his job does involve that. Yes, we are out in the community. It's very important for us to be out in the community. We can have a perfect forecast, but if people have trouble understanding it or responding to it, and we lose lives, or people are unnecessarily injured or lose property they don't need to, and we've not fully completed the task. To really protect lives and property, we need to make sure we're educating people on the information that's available, how to get that information, and then to respond to it. And that's a really important part of our job. It's not just forecasting the weather. Sometimes when I'm home, I have somebody say, well, you must have had a pretty easy week. The weather's been fairly nice. And that's when we put a lot of our effort into those preparedness efforts, as well as trying to introduce new science and technology so we can be at the state of the art.
So we talk with, you know, emergency management officials, but utilities, schools, power squadrons, Boy Scouts, you name it. We're out there as much as we can trying to get the word out. We also like to do some focused campaigns. Once we did a just focused strictly on lightning safety for campgrounds, YMCA, places like that. This year we've been targeting an effort at focusing on towns near the path of the tornado last year. And in fact, we have a Skywarn training sessions. Skywarn is the Weather Service's weather spotters that we train and become official eyes and ears that can actually help us issue a warning if they're seeing something out there, confirming what the radar might be seeing, for example. And so we're holding those sessions in Chicopee this year and in Brimfield, and we hope to have a lot of interested people to learn about the weather features and how to report it to us.
So there's a fair amount on your plate. How many people work out of the Taunton office, roughly?
We have a total of about 27 people, most of the meteorologists, but not all of the meteorologists. And nationwide, we're only about 4,900, relatively small as federal agencies
It is a very small federal agency. So most of the staff that works there, they are meteorologists, but what other kinds of employees do you have?
Yeah, Diane, much of our staff are indeed meteorologists. They all have at least a Bachelor of Science degree. But we do have other staff that are extremely important to us. We have our hydrometeorological technicians who are kind of like the gatekeepers. They're looking at the information coming in, the quality of that information, alerting the forecasters that there may be a problem with some data, or that something is starting to occur that they may not recognize right away. They kind of try to keep the pulse on what's happening now. They are also often the ones that will be coordinating with the media and other folks that call in. So they're both helping with information coming in and out. I think we have an administrative support assistant, second to none. That job's become much more complex and much more challenging, especially as some of the government downsizing that's taken place has reduced the administrative support from central locations. So we're now doing more of that ourselves. But I really want to focus on a group that tend to be unsung heroes in our office, and those are electronic technicians and our information technology officer. These are the folks that keep the systems going, that we rely upon, the communication systems, the computers that we develop our forecasts with. And they have a big load, big workload. They are not only dealing with the computers in a facility that is actually two offices in one, the Weather Forecast Office and the Northeast River Forecast Center, but they're also dealing with or weather radio transmitters. Not just broadcasting, we got to keep those transmitters running. The weather radar, Doppler radar itself that we have is a very complex piece of machinery. and 25 automated surface observing systems across our area. That's actually the most of any office in the country. And in addition to that, they've got the unit that they help support at the Air Route Traffic Control Center, and they've got an upper air facility that they also help support, which is critical to information that get ingested into the computer models. So there's a lot that they do. And I really would tell you a story that I think helps highlight the importance of what they do. It was in May, late May of 2011, when all of our electronic technicians, all 5 of them, were heavily involved in a reconfiguration in our computer room. Major effort, with many systems being consolidated, cables being moved, huge effort, long days lasting pretty much all week long. Towards the end of the week, when they were pretty nearly exhausted, forecasters are starting to note a problem with our radar, a critical warning piece for us. And well, you couldn't blame them if they said, we can look at it next week, you know, let's give us the weekend off to recoup. But no, they stayed late Friday night trying to investigate what the problem was. It was a very challenging problem to diagnose. They did. They ordered parts. They worked on it over the course of the weekend. And this is after these long days of the week before. And come Tuesday, May 31st, that afternoon, they got that radar fully functioning again, turned it back over to the forecasters. Less than 24 hours later, we had the most significant tornado we've seen since the Worcester tornado of 1953 that went from Westfield through Springfield, Munson, Brimfield, all the way to Southbridge, and a EF3 on the enhanced Fujita scale. A deadly tornado. And yet, had that radar, our ET staff, our electronic technician staff, had not been so dedicated and that radar wasn't available, we would have been severely compromised in our warning mission when we needed it the most.
You know, and I'm so glad you told that story because, again, when most people think about the National Weather Service, we think you help tell us whether it's going to be a sunny day and we can go to the beach, whether it's going to be snowy and we need to allow a little bit more time to go to work. But the reality is that you are keeping people safe and you are saving lives. It's very, very important work. Now, Glenn,
So
one of the
actually,
things...
sorry, there's a little segue there with the outreach in the previous section and saving lives. We also like to participate wherever we can in decision support type of activities, and one of them that's coming up this summer that we're actively involved in is commemoration of the War of 1812. There's tall ships and Navy ships that'll be coming into Boston Harbor, and we're actually going to provide on-site weather support to their command center at the Coast Guard, and that'll be helping people. We haven't done that since a lot of preparations that went into the Democratic National Convention back in 94.
Well, and both of those efforts are efforts that the Federal Executive Board was also involved in bringing the other federal agencies together to support those efforts. Glenn, I wanted to come back and talk about
2004, not
storm readiness. Some communities have a storm-ready designation. What is that about, and how does a community get that designation?
Now, no community can ever be storm-proof, but storm-ready is a very big program that was established in the National Weather Service out in the central United States originally, and then it spread everywhere to try to get people prepared to having emergency managers, for example, that are working in coordination with their police, fire departments. Everyone's talking with each other. There's a good communication in a town. And probably the best example to give you is the small town of Van Wert, Ohio, which suffered an F4 tornado that went right through a movie theater. You may have heard about that. And they had just become storm-ready community, and no one was injured because everyone sought shelter in the reinforced bathroom, and there were 50 people watching Santa Claus 2 at the time, And nobody was injured because there was a plan in place that if they receive a warning, they'll contact the movie theater. So we have across southern New England universities, storm-ready towns, so far about 20 of them, and even some storm-ready commercial sites, one of them being Six Flags theme park out in Agawam. And you'd be happy to know that they have their own lightning detection system. They start shutting down the Ferris wheel when lightning is detected within 6 to 10 miles away. Very proactive.
Excellent. So Bob, the future of the National Weather Service, where is the National Weather Service headed?
Well, there's certainly a component where we're going to be aggressive with new science and technology. To some extent, it's to try to forecast more accurately further out. It is also so that we can be more precise in the shorter term. And our hope is that there will be the day we'll be able to get out those localized severe thunderstorm warnings that are very hard to do because thunderstorms form so quickly. But further out in time with maybe 1 to 2 hours, more like 2 hours of lead time, and being able to be more precise as to the location so that people know, hey, it's my neighborhood that's really at risk. So that's certainly one thrust. Another major thrust is trying to work with a national initiative for our country to be a weather-ready nation, to be prepared for different types of weather impacts and respond effectively. Of course, it can save lives. It can also mitigate loss of property. And a big aspect of that is continuing what we do a little bit today, but on a still a greater level of working with other agencies and entities in their decision making, providing that decision support service so that based upon our information, they can then be that much more proactive in the decisions that they make to keep people safe and try to minimize any kind of property loss. So we see a major focus on those decision support services in the years ahead, along with new science and technology for more timely and more accurate forecasts.
We have covered such a tremendous amount of ground here. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think the viewing audience needs to know?
Well, Diane, I've been with the National Weather Service now for over 35 years. And interestingly, a number of folks, and maybe because of our small agency size relatively, do not even realize we're part of the federal government. But I'd like to emphasize that we are proud to be part of our United States government, and especially proud to be a part of that government whose mission is to protect lives and to enhance the livelihood of Americans. And for that, it gives us great motivation to come to work every day.
Thank you. Again, this time just really for me flew by. I want to thank our guests from the National Weather Service for joining us and for helping us to better understand the work of their agency, and in particular the Taunton Weather Forecast Office, which again covers all of southern New England. I thank you for watching, and I hope you will continue to join us as we feature other federal agencies on your federal government.